Welcome to the All About You podcast. My name is Sheila and I am your host. In this podcast, I invite everyday people to tell their stories of their travels, passions, and what makes them happy. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story. So now for today's conversation. Welcome to another conversation on the All About You podcast. I think that many of us believe that we are beginning to see the light at the end of the pandemic situation and also learning to live in the new normal, but that can also be stressful. So with this in mind, I wanted to have a guest who can help us to find some peace in our day that is beneficial for both our physical and mental health. So I'm delighted to have as my guest Kate Greenslade, who is a mindfulness life coach. And Kate is going to give us some pointers in how to incorporate mindfulness in our everyday life. So Kate, welcome to the All About You podcast.
Thanks so much, Sheila. It's so nice to be here and have a conversation with you about such a great topic.
So Kate, if you would like to introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure. So yeah, Sheila, as you mentioned, I'm a mindfulness coach. So I help individuals to have a more enjoyable experience of life, in short. So I also train leaders and teams to be able to feel more in charge of their workload, to be more resilient, and to be like more creative and collaborative at work. These are really important and useful tools to have to make working more enjoyable as well. So like the whole purpose really is to help people have a better relationship with their minds and to be able to kind of figure out their way in the world in a way that makes sense to them and gives them more joy and happiness.
Let's start off at the very beginning. What is mindfulness?
Good question. There is so much written about mindfulness these days. And unless you do not read any news or pick up a magazine or anything, you've probably come across the word at some point. But there's quite a lot of misconception about what mindfulness is, how you practice it, and also the difference between mindfulness and meditation. Like, what is the difference? And a lot of people get understandably a bit confused about this. So mindfulness essentially is living with full awareness in the present moment without judgment. And I'll go into what that means in a moment in a little bit more detail. But the difference between meditation and mindfulness is meditation is how we practice mindfulness in a sort of formal setting. So imagine it's a bit like going to the gym for your mind. You sit down in a formal meditation and you practice certain skills, certain techniques in a meditation, so that when we go out into the world, we can then apply these techniques to live mindfully. So it's kind of an extension of this idea that we are fully aware of what we're doing, and therefore we have more choice and more freedom in our life. So the opposite of that would be when we're lost in thought. We all know what that means, what that feels like. I guess an example of that would be we are driving home from the shops and we get home and we think, how did I get here? I've got no recollection of the journey. I can't remember turning left or right or anything because I was lost in thought. I was worrying about what I've got to do tomorrow. I'm ruminating about this meeting I had yesterday that didn't go very well and it's really bothering me, and all the other things in between. And so we sort of live a lot of our life like that, on sort of automatic pilot, as it's often referred to. And it means that we're then just sort of being led by our thoughts and our emotions, and we don't really have as much choice about what we want to do, how we want to feel, what we want to focus our attention on, our energy, our thoughts on. So the practice of mindfulness really helps us to have a better handle on our thoughts and emotions, on ourselves, and it gives us specific techniques to have a different perspective on life, be able to kind of extract ourselves, I suppose, from the sort of everyday stresses. You mentioned going back to some sort of normal. It has actually triggered some stress for you. Obviously, that's very common, and a lot of people are feeling that way. But one of the things that mindfulness helps us with in that respect is to be able to step back from those difficult, stressful feelings that have arisen there, to understand where that's come from, maybe get some perspective on that, sort of really unpick what's happening, what's the fears there, what's reality, what's really happening. Because often in this autopilot state that we live in, we can often find ourselves living in our minds, either in the past or in the future, which means that we're not really living in the moment right now. I'm just looking out my window now and noticing the beautiful color of the sky. And if I smell the air, I'm now aware of what that smells like. And if I check in with my body, I can do a quick check and tell what temperature I'm at, or if my feet are hurting, if I need to change my shoes, or maybe I need to open a window. So we miss so much by worrying about tomorrow and concerning ourselves with yesterday. So that's in a nutshell.
I mean, just listening to what you're saying there, Kate, we are always thinking in the future, what's the next thing I'm going to do after this? What have I got to do at 5 o'clock? What am I doing tonight? What am I doing tomorrow? We are on autopilot. Obviously, I knew I was having this conversation with you, and I just thought, why don't I make the time to sit in a chair and read a book with a cup of tea, to say, right, for 30 minutes, this is what I'm going to try and do every day this week. Let's start small today. And then when I look at my diary, I think, you've got to be joking. This is sort of the first full week, I guess, and my ballet class has started and my Spanish class has started and all these different things. I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to sort of carve out half an hour to sit with a cup of tea and read a book. And it's crazy, because you look at the diary and you think, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And it's all sort of time sensitive things. Yeah, we're just always on autopilot, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think a really important point that you bring up is always on the go. We fill our diary. It's almost like a habit or an addiction. We feel like if we're not busy, then we're not working hard enough, for example, at work. Working hard means, running yourself into the ground 10 hours a day, And if we're not working at the moment, it's still just filling every moment with something, every day with stuff. And there seems, in society, there's this sort of idea that has been told to us, is constantly on, in advertising, that this is how we get our worth. If we're busy and we're doing a lot of stuff, then we're worth it, we're good, that's correct way to live. But what's happening with that idea is that everyone is just burning out. And are we actually enjoying half the stuff we're doing? I mean, I imagine if you looked at your calendar and was really, really honest, you could probably scrub out half of that stuff. And it's, part of what mindfulness helps us with is that real sort of clarity, that lens we can look through, saying, do I really want to do whatever X or Y? Do I need to do it? And do I need to do it then? So it's sort of like these different questions we can ask ourselves and be really honest. And some of the answers, I would say, can bring up some discomfort. When I started to really intentionally put more space into my life, it felt uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie about that, of course, because I was also used to being on that train of do. And I had my own business with my husband for 10 years before I became a mindfulness coach. And I was busy all the time. Particularly when you work for yourself, I think there's that sort of guilt that creeps in. Well, if I'm not doing something for my business, really the only thing I should be doing is sleeping, and even when you're out with friends, you might be thinking about a marketing campaign or, it's just ridiculous, and it seeps into everything. So I found with that wasn't making me happy. In fact, it was doing the opposite, making me decidedly unhappy. And by adding intentional space, like I think some people call it like white space, when we put that in our calendars, I sort of love that phrase. And it can be awkward because we're not used to sitting quietly by ourselves, with ourselves. Our minds are whirring 100 miles an hour all the time. But we feel, well, what we can find is that the more time we spend sitting and accepting some silence and peace and quiet, just who we are, accepting ourselves, the easier it is to do that. And then the more you start craving it.
I think it's very interesting you brought up the white space, because I'm very much a planner. You know, I look at my diary, right, this is what I'm doing. A sort of an empty page for me is my idea of hell, because I'm one of these people, I work better if I've got time, things that have to be done. That makes me sort of happy. And I came across this concept reading an article about planning, and it said about creating this white space in your daily diary. And I just thought, how come I've never heard of this before? It makes so much sense. And the white space literally could be, right, my white space, I sit down with a cup of tea and I read a chapter of my book. It's so simple, but in reality, and that's where you're going to come in, Kate. How do we actually do this white space?
Well, that first step to any of this stuff is awareness. We've got to be aware. We've got to be conscious. Is another word that's interchangeable with being mindful, being aware, being conscious. Is that the opposite of being in autopilot? When we're lost in thought, we're lost. We are not present. So when we're not present, we can't see things any differently from they are. We just are in the problem, or we're in the worry, in the anxiety. So as soon as we become aware, we can start to notice those things. And rather than being that anxiety, we can then observe the anxiety. And we can observe those difficult, stressful thoughts or critical thoughts. You know, we've all got an inner critic that's, you know, whirring away most of the time. And if we really become aware of that, we can start to just notice it with curiosity. We can notice it with some kindness, actually. You know, we're so hard on ourselves all the time, you know, judging ourselves. And that also means that we judge others. You know, we just do it as a natural thing. Our brains want to judge, they want to find problems, they want, you know, they are looking for danger, you know, on an evolutionary level. Our brains have got their own job going on, you know, as animals. And obviously the world that we live in these days, we don't need that quite so much. So what happens is they start judging, everything around us instead, where we're living, how we're living, who we're hanging out with, our family, obviously, and us. And if we identify too much with those thoughts and those judgments, that's when we can really start to feel just, well, not great. You know, we can feel depressed, we can feel anxious, and just, really stressed out, and sort of think, what's going on? What life am I living here? Is this really it? And I think a lot of people that I work with kind of got to that point of like, I do need something. I'm not sure what it is. It's maybe not therapy, but I need another way to be, because this isn't working. And so, you know, you mentioned, how can we do that? And going back to that first step of awareness is really just sitting, being aware, which is why meditation is a key, the sort of essence of this returning to awareness and being, just noticing what's going on and accepting what's happening without judgment. So that was the second piece, going back to what mindfulness is, noticing without judgment in the present moment. And it sounds super simple, but it's pretty difficult to achieve. Like I said, because our minds are always off doing something else. They want to do something else. So it is you're creating new habits to think in a different way, essentially.
When you were speaking and you were talking about our inner critic, a lot of us will work on a to-do list. And, you know, we start the day and we've got, 10 things on our to-do list. We might get 3 or 4 done. We would not congratulate ourselves on doing the 3. We would rather have a rant at ourselves because you haven't completed everything, or you've only completed 3. Instead of being kind to ourselves, because we would never speak to anybody else the way we speak to ourselves. And if we could say, okay, you had 8 things on your list, you only did 3 of them, well, you've done 3. And in theory, as long as they are the most important things, then great. You know, we just don't know what's going to come in the course of a day. So as much as you have your day planned out, life happens. As you were saying, it's showing kindness to yourself. That's one thing we don't naturally do. The mindfulness would be a good way to start. Okay, I'm going to be kind to myself. You didn't get all 8 things done, Sheila, but you got 3 things done. Be happy with what you've done. You couldn't control all the other things that were going on, but showing kindness to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crucial. So one thing that's just comes out of that is expectation that we have of ourselves. If we remove expectation, it is what it is. You've done 3 things out of 8. That's a fact. It's the added story that we put on that is the thing that we can really suffer from. Oh, look, you've only done 3 things out of 8. You're so lazy. What have you been doing all day? Da 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 da. And on it goes. You know, we've all done that. But actually, just looking at, okay, I've done 3 out of 8. I'll try and get number 4 and 5 done tomorrow. That's it. Finish. No more story. No more. Doesn't matter. I don't need to be critical. Even sort of being, you know, praising it or just accepting, okay, that's what I've done and I'm sort of happy with that, and that's that. I think the other thing that came up is being realistic about how long things take. You know, there's so many things, as you mentioned, are out of our control. You know, there might be one thing on our to-do list that requires input from 5 other people, for example. And that is not very much not in our control. So it might take us 3 weeks to complete one task because we're waiting on other people. And like you say, life happens and et cetera, et cetera. And so it's extracting that meaning and that value from that, how many things you've done on your to-do list each day. It doesn't show what you're like as a person, who you are, your value in this world, you know. And it's really being aware of that. And again, always going back to awareness. I'm noticing I'm having these thoughts. I'm noticing I'm thinking negatively about the fact I've only done 3 things out of 8. Okay, so I'm noticing that. I'm going to give that a moment. I'm going to be kind. And also, one of the things about really being truly mindful is coming back to the present moment. I mean, that is where life exists. It's the only place that life exists, in this present moment. So we use the body, we use our environment as sort of anchors to come back. The breath, you know, obviously a lot of people talk about using the breath, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's always with you, and it's also automatic, and we have some charge over it. It's a very unique system. So the breath is a perfect way to connect back to the present moment, take some deep breaths, and then just begin again with whatever it is that you're doing.
I mean, I think, Kate, when you are talking about being in the present, there's nothing we can change about the past. That's done and dusted, right or wrong. The future is in our heads. To a certain extent, there's nothing we can do. We can prepare for the future. We can plan to a certain extent. But as you say, bringing yourself back to that present. Often when we feel we are getting a bit wrapped up in the voices in our head, or we're feeling stressed, we often feel that in the body. You know, you might feel a tightening in the chest or a knot in your stomach. We often feel that in our body. So I can see how, okay, let's just take a minute or so and breathe. Is going to get that oxygen in the body, and it's hopefully going to make that stomach feel a bit calmer. I mean, we all know stress is just awful for everything. And if you're constantly having that, a way to get rid of it, I mean, I'm sort of thinking if somebody's sitting in an office, just take yourself to the loo or to the corridor and just take some breaths. Yeah, I can see that.
Definitely. I mean, even at your desk, you know, no one needs to see that no one can even notice even that you're breathing deeply for a few breaths, and maybe close your eyes or even just sort of look down, you know, away from any notes or the screen, just for a moment, and just take a few moments to breathe. And the reason that connecting to the breath is so useful is because the respiratory system is connected to the nervous system. And as you quite rightly explain, stress feels awful, of course, that our bodies are constantly communicating with us through the language of sensation and pain. That is how they communicate with us. So if we don't listen to what it's saying, we've got no chance of helping out what's happening. There's always information to be listened to. And the more we can listen and accept any sensation, the easier and sort of smoother it sort of flows through your body. I can imagine everybody that's listening to this has had a moment when they felt nervous about something, and perhaps they've noticed that in their stomach, a little turning over, we're a bit nervous about whatever it is, some high pressure situation or a difficult situation. It will present in your body and you will have noticed that at some point. But the more we can kind of really focus on that, it's almost going towards it rather than away. A lot of in our daily lives, a lot of the stuff that we're presented with all day from social media, advertising, TV, whatever, is a distraction. It's taking ourselves away from ourselves. And what we want to do is connect deeper and understand ourselves better, because there's peace there. We actually, that inner peace does exist, but we just bury it with all this crap that we think we need, we think we should be doing. Again, going back to, your busy calendar and mine for that matter, there are things in there that I think I should be doing, but I don't want to do them, and I probably don't need to do them. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we could probably cut out a few of those things. Brings me on to that idea about saying no and how we say no with kindness, which is a really, really important skill to have. And I think a lot of people, again, me included, found it difficult in the past to say no. And when we continually do that and put ourselves below other people, we can build up resentment. And even if we're not connected to that resentment, our bodies will be feeling it. Maybe we get knots in our shoulders, or maybe we just get really short-tempered and irritable, or we can't sleep, but it will come out, it will squeak out in some way, because it always does.
I think this is really, really interesting, you talking about this very small word, no. It's a tiny word, it's 2 letters, but we're always a little bit frightened of saying no. So if somebody asks you, can you go somewhere? Can you do something? Can you whatever? Maybe you have an initial reaction, oh yeah, I quite fancy doing that. It's a definite yes. But if we're not sure, and I was reading this article the other day, and it's brilliant you've brought this up, and it said, instead of saying yes or no on the spot, thank the person for the invitation and say, let me check, I'll come back to you. That gives you the time to sit down and go, okay, is this something I really want to do? If it's something you really want to do, you'll find room in your calendar to do it, and you go ahead and do it. If you don't want to do it, it's just giving you a grace period to say to yourself, okay, is this something I really want to do? Is it easy for me to do, or does it mean I've got to juggle other things to do it? Am I going to do it because to please this other person more than me? And just by saying, okay, let me come back to you, which nobody will think anything bad of you, and it just gives you that grace period to really think, is this what I really want to do? Or am I doing it for the sake of the other person? So I think what you're saying is just so valuable.
I think it's a really powerful thing to be able to say no with kindness, obviously, because it makes your yeses more significant as well. So there's 2 things there. I think it gives you, giving yourself that pause, again, with everything, not just when someone's asked you if you can do something, or if you want to hang out with them, or whatever it is, that pause sort of through the day when you just need a moment. Like, we don't stop ever. And thinking about trying to multitask, whether this is in your job or just at home with life admin, which seems to increase every year. What is that? Just so much to do. And if we're trying to do too many things at the same time, we're not really doing any of them very well. We're not doing any of them with our full attention or awareness or ability for that. We are more, it's been, there's so many studies, to show that, by using mindfulness practices, i.e. to be really return to the present moment and be truly aware of what you're doing right now, like we're doing now. So we're in this conversation. I'm 100% focused on what we're talking about. I'm not trying to write an email while you're talking. I'm not, whatever it is, tidying my desk at the same time. I'm doing one thing. And what we find is that when we do one thing with full awareness, we do it better, it's more effective, and it probably takes less time. I mean, try this out, play around with it and see how that feels. But, in the morning, particularly, what comes to mind is, pottering around the house. And we're trying to unload the dishwasher while we're trying to eat toast, and we're trying to talk to our partners about something, or we're trying to look up something on our phone. It's like this sort of chaotic juggling, and that can leave us just feeling rushed and just all over the place, So by doing one of each of those things separately, probably won't take more time, but you'll feel less dragged along by life.
As soon as you're out of bed, you're doing 3 or 4 things at once. And I know that's exactly how I start my day. But I think women particularly, while the kettle is boiling, we're doing 3 or 4 things to get ourselves ahead in the rest of the day. But that's not a good way to begin your day, because obviously, as the day goes on, speed ramps up and the phone starts ringing and emails start coming in. I mean, I'd hate to think what it's like in the average office these days.
I think that's a really good point about, as the day goes on, things ramp up and, it gets busier and busier. I think one of the things that mindfulness has taught me, and certainly, the teams that I work with, is that it's a choice about how you show up to your work and how you do each task that you have to do. Of course, there are times when we have to use our cognitive mind to plan things, to do certain things, of course, but it's doing them with intention and with full awareness and taking the time that you want for them. There's that great idea of, the different concepts of time. I mean, time obviously is kind of made up, and we've made up this clock that we go by, and it's so restrictive. But also, I think if we just put that aside for a moment, because that's probably a whole other podcast to talk about time, but just that thought that I've got the time I want to spend on this. Like, I make half an hour every morning to have a coffee, because I want to spend that time just kind of waking up, being quiet, enjoying my coffee, actually tasting it, rather than just chucking it down my neck as I'm driving to work or wherever I'm going. And that is a choice that I have made, and therefore I make time for that. So if you really want to have that half an hour with your cup of tea and your book, you will make time for it, because we do make time for the things that we really want to do in the end. But in order to do that, to get to that point, that journey is being aware, okay, hang on, what's my day feeling like without that half an hour with a cup of tea and a book? Actually, it's feeling quite chaotic. It's feeling rushed. I feel like I'm doing all this stuff for other people. Where's me in this? And, it's kind of going back to those, simple quotes, obviously, that people say about how you spend your day is how you spend your life. It's simple, but it's so true. And it can really kind of pull us up and make us be conscious and think, how am I spending my days? How am I spending my week? Yeah, that is your life. This is your life. And you do have more choices than you think you do.
Social media has just escalated time incredibly. I mean, we've all got our life on our phone. And I know, my husband and I, we're watching a TV program, the adverts come on, we both pick up our phone, we go through Facebook, we go through Instagram, the program starts, we put our phones down. And the other day, and I said to him, that's it. This is just, it's almost like I caught myself red-handed. And I thought, oh my God, what are you doing? And I thought, absolutely no. So I said to my husband, and I mean, this is the good influence you are on me. I said to my husband, okay, after dinner tonight, weather permitting, because we're due to have a storm tonight, I'm going to go for a walk. And I've put it on my to-do list, and it's going to be ticked off even if the other things don't, because it's too easy to sit after dinner scrolling or watching TV. And I thought, no, I'm going to have a coffee and then I'm going to go for a walk. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I'm not going to be watching TV. And I'm just, who's about, what's the weather like, what's been going on, just generally, probably only going to be for half an hour. But that's what I plan to do this evening, because I think that's just a nice way to end the day. Particularly, so many people are having problems with sleeping. And as much as we have a sleep routine for babies and children, adults, we are trying to override that, because we can watch TV till late at night. We can have social media, or, you can have a couple of glasses of wine. None of that is being particularly helpful with our sleep. And I know for myself, if I watch a lot of TV in the evening, maybe 3 programs, it affects my sleep. So I'm thinking, right, by going for this walk, have a nice walk after dinner, apparently it's good for the digestion. You're not watching the TV, you haven't got your phone with you, and just see what's going on. As you say, be aware of your surroundings and take that half hour.
Yeah, it's a lovely idea. I'd love to hear how that feels actually when you've done that, and what if any difference that makes. I think it's also really important to, like you said, you were saying, I might not do that 5 nights in a row, but this is what I want to do. I intend to do this. I think what's really helpful with sort of being mindful, i.e. being fully aware of what you're doing, is it, again, does give you this choice. If you want to have 4 glasses of wine and watch Netflix till 2 a.m, do that. But be aware of what that feels like. Be conscious of when you're, how that feels at the time. Do it purposefully. Because when we do things purposefully, and we do them with intention, and we do them with our full awareness, we can get a different experience of them. I do this exercise right at the beginning of a mindfulness course that I run, where we eat a piece of fruit with full awareness, and it's guided. I guide people through it. It takes maybe 5 minutes to eat 1 piece of fruit. And so no one's ever eaten a piece of fruit like that before. We look at it first, we smell it, we use all of our senses. It takes a long time, and it's incredible the different experience that you get from doing that. And I'm not saying, obviously we totally slow down how we eat things. It would take us 2 hours to eat a meal, but what it does is it reminds us that if we are fully present, there's a lot more of a sort of rich experience of life that is waiting for us. It's right there in front of us. It's there. And like you say with your walk, that's outside your door. That's round the corner, up the road. Who knows who you're going to meet? That's, again, linking back to expectations, just letting go of any expectations. Just see what happens. Be in the present moment. Just be there. Yeah, it can be wonderful.
I mean, another thing that I started doing in the summer, which I found was quite a nice thing to do, is sitting and having my lunch, but having some nice, gentle, classical music playing. And I just found a YouTube video on my phone, and I found I was eating slower. I found I was really, it was a salad I'd made myself, and I was just listening to the music, but really sort of looking at the textures and the colours and what I'd actually put in the salad, where it's come from and how it's grown, that type of thing. And I caught myself doing that, and I just thought, I've actually starting to really look, how many different colours have I got in this salad? How many different textures? What could I add to the salad that would sort of make it a little bit different? But it was just listening to the music, eating slower. I swear it took me twice as long to eat my lunch. I felt really full after it. And I guess that's the stomach and the brain connection catching up with itself. And it was just a totally different lunch experience.
That's amazing, isn't it? And that is the only thing that's different that you're describing there.
Yeah.
Is you're fully present with it. You were there, not writing emails, not trying to talk to someone else or whatever, and you're you in the salad with your lovely music in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just, I was eating slower. It just really was a good experience.
When we start to use mindfulness more and more, we might be meditating once a day, just even 10 minutes a day. There's over 6,000 studies now to show the benefits of meditating, so I highly recommend trying it if you've not. There's tons of apps that you can try, free ones, all sorts, and then really kind of just making a few moments through the day to really consider. It's all like a little check-in. Okay, how am I feeling right now? Okay, whatever's present is fine. Total acceptance. It's just curiosity. Okay, this is what I'm feeling. How's my body feeling? What's going on? What sensations are present? One of my clients, I remember, had this terrible pain in his neck. And after a few weeks of doing these sessions, he discovered exactly what was the problem. It was that his chair was too high. And I mean, that sounds like a simple thing, right? But for years, he'd been sitting in the same chair on the same desk with this pain in his neck. But from increasing his body awareness, which is what he was doing, he discovered, I can't quite, my toes are on my tippy toes, So he just lowered his chair and his neck pain went away. So, these things, it doesn't need to be sort of enormous transformations in our life, but those things mean that we can change our experience of the everyday, and just, there can be tweaks here and there that mean that you feel different. They could be small changes, but they have a big impact. Just going to maybe mention something about relationships, because this is like such an important thing, possibly the most important thing, for humans. We make connections with friends, family, colleagues, and one of the things that mindfulness helps us to do is to be present with another person, and we can deepen our connection to other people just by listening, not jumping in, waiting to speak, which obviously we all do. We've all been guilty of that, I'm sure of it. Someone's saying something, you're like, oh yeah, I want to say this. And we're not really truly listening to them, what they're saying, and also how they're saying it. So we're not really picking up as much as we could be around how they're feeling about things or their emotions, and so it's kind of getting that full picture and really being there with someone. And that is such a gift, and it can really take any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage or with your children, to a really different level. Quite amazing.
I mean, Kate, I'm just blown away by this check in with yourself. Every so often, check in. How am I feeling? How is my body? Have I got any tension anywhere? Am I feeling thirsty? Am I feeling tired? Particularly a lot of people in front of a computer or desk. Do I need to just get up and stretch and maybe walk around a bit? It's that checking in every so often, I think is brilliant. Yes, it's simple to do. It's not rocket science. Just check in with your body. What are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you at that point? I mean, we ask other people how they are, but do we ever ask ourselves?
Exactly. Like you said, it's simple, but the trick is to do it. That is the difficult bit, is to remember to do it. Even if you think, yeah, that's a great thing, I'm definitely doing that. A day can come and go in a flash, as we all know. And so, the practice, let's say, the mindfulness practice is to become aware enough to remember to keep doing it, and change only happens with repetition. You've got to keep doing it to form a new habit, and then it becomes habitual, and then the automatic thing is actually checking in with yourself and becoming being aware and conscious, not being lost in thought. So you can switch that state by regular practice, and that's how the meditation really helps to kind of ground that sense of awareness and what you're doing. And then really you've got choice. Brings us choice and freedom in our life. Yeah, my shoulders are really tense, right? I need to either take a break, or maybe a longer break. I need a holiday, or I need some massages, or maybe I need to do some yoga. Definitely a way to help to understand yourself better and listen to yourself better. Like you mentioned, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? these are really key things that we ignore a lot. And then we ignore them. Oh, and now we're cranky, and then I'm shouting at my husband. It's like, I could have fixed this an hour ago and just got a drink and maybe had a little 10-minute sit down and outside, but I've left it because I feel this pressure to just keep going and keep going. Oh, but I've just got these other emails to do. Oh, now someone's asked me this. Well, can it wait? Yeah, maybe. Okay.
But I think that's it. It's checking in with your body as well as with your mind. It's almost like having a conversation with yourself. If we go back to the to-do list, okay, Sheila, you didn't complete everything, but give yourself a pat on the back and a gold star because you got sort of the 3 most important things done. But it's being showing kindness to ourselves. It's being kind to ourselves. And we often go back to this busyness where we will say to somebody, how are you? And they would say, fine. Now, apparently, we're all saying busy. Busy has replaced the new fine. And oh, you're busy. We're all busy, whether you've got children, whether you've got a business, whether you're retired, whatever. Most people are busy, which is good for some people. But as you say, there comes a point where being busy is detrimental to our physical and our mental health. So if we can have this physical and mental check-in, just how are you feeling, Sheila? How's your mind going? Do you need to get a drink? Do you need to stretch for a minute? Get in touch with ourselves more during the day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so true, isn't it, that we kind of use this busyness as a bit of a badge of honor, and it's kind of slowly killing us. And no one ever looks back at their life and says, oh, I wish I was more busy. I wasn't busy enough. It's like, definitely don't really want these things. And one of the things that's come out of becoming a mindfulness coach for me is I've really been able to create and design the life I want without guilt. And for sure, sometimes it creeps in. Well, that sort of old voice, that would come in. Oh, what you think you can take Fridays off now? Oh, you think no. This is how I want to live my life, because life is short and then we die. So I can decide what brings me joy, how I can help other people, what means something to me, how I want to feel. Like, no one ever asks themselves, how do you want to feel this week? Okay, so how are you going to get to that? What are you going to do to get to those feelings? We don't take enough time on ourselves. Like you said, being kind, we slip down that list and then time runs out.
But that is brilliant though, Kate, isn't it? How do I want to feel this week? What do I want to do for me this week? I'm sure if you and I went through our to-do list today, there's very little on there for us, actually things we want to do, whether it's you want to have a conversation with a family member, or you want to go out and buy yourself some new shoes or something. There's probably very little on that list that is for us in a nurturing, kind way, because on our to-do list is like the house, the shopping, the kids, the family, the work, the business, X, Y, Z. Is there anything on there? I want to sit down and finish a creative project, or I want to get my nails done, or I want to have, a half-hour nap or something. That's probably not on anyone's to-do list.
No, those great things never are. It's such a shame, isn't it? Also, it's one thing saying, well, yeah, I'd really like to, whatever, go for a little walk today on my own, or have a nap. Naps are great. As many naps as people can have. I highly recommend naps. But yeah, whatever it is that you want to do, it's always, but I've got to do this, but I've got to do that. And I think that's where coming back to that sense of really being aware, really being honest, and getting a perspective on life and what you are doing. Do you really have to do that right now? Obviously, some things are time sensitive, of course. You've got to pick your kid up from school at 3. But are there other ways that you can modify some of these things, or ask for help? We are terrible at asking for help. If someone else does the shopping, well, they might not do it the way you like it to be done. They might forget a couple of things, but is it the end of the world? No. Does it mean you can have a nap? Yes. Okay, well, that's great for me. So it's really being honest, being honest with the choices that you really do have, and then acting on acting on it, being bold and saying, you know what, I'm not doing the shopping anymore. It's your turn, with kindness, obviously.
I mean, I think that is a very valid point. You said asking for help. If we ask someone for help, and if they can help us, that relieves the pressure on us. And for another person to feel that you've actually helped somebody out, that's a great feeling. And that's good for your mental and physical health. I mean, it when we feel we've done something good, it releases endorphins in our body.
Yeah.
But as you say, we're not very good at saying to somebody, oh, when you're in the supermarket, can you just grab me a couple of bits as well? I mean, I'm sure you could do the same for them. But we're not very good at this asking for help when it is actually a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, and I used to be terrible at asking for help. And that can also sound quite loaded and serious about asking for help. It can be as simple as, can you book the restaurant for the weekend? Because that would be really helpful if you could do that. People definitely like helping, or when they offer, not saying no. Sometimes just giving that space and thinking, okay, yeah, that would be really nice. Like, that has always been really awkward for me. And it never occurred to me that actually what you're also doing with that, when you say no to someone when they're offering help, is you're kind of denying the other person the opportunity to be kind to you, like you said. And so actually you're also missing out on an opportunity to connect deeper with that person. Because when we are kind to each other, it reciprocates, you're creating significance and you're deepening that connection. Yeah, so it's all really, really important to do that. And it can be uncomfortable, but just try it out. And the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes.
I mean, this conversation has been absolutely fascinating, Kate. Just to finish off, can you give us just one thing that we can all try and incorporate in our day for the next week? Can you just give us a simple action point that we can all do? Only going to take a few minutes, but something we can say, okay, this week I'm going to try and do this as many times this week as I can. Just one action point.
There's one which is really about the body. You've got to connect back to the body in order to really listen fully to what's going on, to your whole self. You're made up of this incredible complex intelligence, and we often only listen to our thoughts, but actually there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. So a grounding practice, when everything maybe just feels a little bit too much, when you're just feeling a bit stressed, a bit chaotic, a bit rushed, is to just take 1 minute and do this grounding practice. So you stand up and get sort of steady. If you need to hold on to the back of a chair or the wall, close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, or you could lower your gaze and just take a moment to sort of steady yourself, and then become aware of your feet, and then very slowly work your way up, becoming aware of each part of your body as you slowly scan up from your feet, and you'll slowly reach your head. And this really can take as long as you want. If you want to take 10 minutes doing it, brilliant. You could, but it can be a minute really out of your day. So it can be fitted in anywhere. So what it does, it just gives you a little reset, and you'll just notice, if you notice each part of your body, how it's feeling, without judgment, with curiosity, with an open mind. It's just seeing what's there. Your body's already responding. It's living, it's doing something. There are sensations in our body all the time. So what we're doing is we're just checking in with those sensations and just noticing how we're feeling. That can include also your emotions. So you've got body scan. When you get to the head, you might start noticing, okay, how's my mind behaving right now as well? Is it clear? Is it calm? Is it busy? Is it a bit chaotic? How am I feeling? What are my emotions doing right now? And from there, then you can make some choices.
I feel relaxed just listening to you. But that's simple, isn't it? I mean, you can just take a minute and, as you say, do a full body scan. And the thing is, we often separate our physical health and our mental health, but everything's connected. Because if you're having a stressful day, you're going to feel that in your body. Maybe if you haven't slept well, you're going to feel that in, your mind's going to feel tired, your body's going to feel heavy and sluggish. They are so connected. So just to have that scan from literally your feet up into your mind, how's your body feeling and how's your brain feeling? I mean, that is so powerful, and that's just a minute.
Yeah, it's I think these things, they can seem, oh, there's no point, it's just a minute, I'll do the scan later, or we just sort of forget, or we think, oh, it's pointless. But really intending to give it a go will give you a certain experience. It will give you a different experience from just sort of sitting there and ploughing on with your day, or, oh, I'll do it later. Just I would invite everybody to try it once or twice and just see how you feel. And it might be that you just notice, you know what, I can't concentrate. My mind is so kind of busy and thinking about what I've got to do next that I can't do that. And that's also information. You're now aware, okay, your mind's really busy. Maybe you need something else. Maybe actually a lovely massage, or maybe you need deeper break, a longer rest, or something else might work. Actually going for a run, physical exercise is great for just sort of cutting that thinking mind off at the pass, when we just need a bit of break, going for a swim or a run or something.
We can do this on a regular basis. Long term, that's got to keep your physical and mental health better than if you're just ploughing on regardless and not realizing you're holding stress in your shoulders, or as you were saying, the gentleman who had the neck pain. Even if we start off once a day, so okay, every day at 3 o'clock, I'm just going to take a minute, do a scan, see what's checking in. Over a period of time, if we can build that into sort of, once every day and just keep going with that, it's going to make us more aware of our body, more aware of our mind, and hopefully long term that's going to have beneficial effects.
Definitely. And like you're saying with your salad, it's such a great example, because when you do that with one thing or in one area of your life, it's difficult not to do it in another area, because we live in patterns. You'll start noticing patterns. If you behave in a certain way with something, you're probably likely to behave in that way with something else. Our body just learns in patterns, and this is how we behave. We're habitual creatures. So by creating this new habit, it will leak into other things. It might be that, you're then having dinner with someone and you just feel more aware and more present in that moment, and therefore there's more possibilities. Like it can go in different directions. Well, there's so much more to say, but
I think we're going to have you back for part 2, Kate.
Oh, that would be a pleasure.
Yeah, I think we've just scratched the surface, but I very much like the fact that if we can start just doing this body scan on a regular basis, it would be interesting to see what comes up. Just taking that one, and everybody can take 1 minute. Everybody can take 1 minute a day and just see what comes up. And I think what will happen, we'll become a bit more acquisitive. We'll say, okay, well, that's how I felt at 4 o'clock. Oh, I wonder if I did it at 10 o'clock in the morning, would it be different? And I think we'll start saying, okay, in the mornings, I feel more stressed than maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or vice versa. So I think sort of having a play about with the times, and if you can do it at 2 different times during the day, I think it'd be interesting to see what comes up for each person. Kate, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, it's been a real pleasure, and hopefully some little tips in there, or just some things to think about to start thinking about these different concepts and techniques.
So Kate, thank you very much indeed for being a guest on the All About You podcast.
Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget, if you have a story you would like to tell, please get in touch. My email address is allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and thank you for listening.